18a, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down. Going back to analyze this whole. Oh, that's right. Price. Yeah. So Gufa, going back to what we said yesterday, Amar Rava. Rava says, Zar sha'achal min ha'ola. So we have a non-Kohen who goes to eat from a Ola offering, an offering that's fully consumed on the altar, Lifnei Zrika, before the blood has been thrown. One of the 4 official jobs of services of the Korban is one of them is the throwing of the blood. So before that point, outside of the walls of Yerushalayim, we said earlier, Rabbi Shimon, you're lokech chamish. You get 5 sets of lashes. Now, I double checked. Rashi earlier seems to say you don't get actually lashes. You have 5 violations. Others seem to argue on him, but simply said you're over 5 violations by doing this. So you're eating the Ola, you can't do. You do it before Zrika, you can't do. You do it outside of the Azara, the courtyard, and outside the Choma, you can't do. So you get 5 violations. So says the Gemara now, Velilki nami mishum v'zar lo yochal ki kodesh hem. So there's another verse which is mentioned by, I think it's by the inauguration actually of the Mishkan, which we had in this past week's parsha, but it's a pasuk at the end of Shmos, and it says there v'zar lo yochal, the korbanos you're going to bring then, a non-Kohen can't eat them ki kodesh hem, because they are holy. So it's interesting. It's talking about eating the sacrifices that were brought at the inauguration of the altar, and it gives a reason. It says ki kodeshem, you can't eat them because they're holy. So from there, the Gemara assumes anything which is then holy, you're going to have another prohibition that you can't eat it. So this Ola is also holy, and therefore you should add on another prohibition of why you can't eat it, and you should get 6, not 5. So says the Gemara, no. There, the beginning of the pasuk says the Kohanim could eat them. So there, the verse was telling you something which the Kohanim eat, you cannot eat. But in Ola, nobody could eat. A Kohen can't eat it either. So therefore, it's different. It's different, and therefore that prohibition is not going to apply to anything which is holy. It'll only apply to things that are holy that the Kohanim could eat. On that, we say you can't eat it. But here in Ola, nobody could eat. Fine, so we'll try again. Velilki nami mishum ubasar besad treifa lo sochelu. So this is also there towards the end of Shmos. Hashem says you should be holy people to me. Ubasar besad treifa lo sochelu. So it says that the meat, it says besada, the meat of the field, which is a treifa, you shouldn't eat. Rather, you should give it to the dogs. Yeah. So says the Gemara, what does it mean, the meat of the fields? So, kevan sheyatza basar chutz lemechitzaso nasar. You should consider, it sounds like you should consider, this word sada is extra. The word field is extra. So, what it means is, it's actually telling you that anything which you eat in the field means a place that has no walls around it. That's called a sada. So anything holy which you eat in a place that has no walls, you should also be over the violation. So in this case, you're eating an Ola offering outside of the walls of Yerushalayim, you should also be in violation of this prohibition. Yeah. So why don't we say that? Why is it only 5 and not 6? So we say, no. This is talking about specifically something which, if you were to eat it inside the proper area, inside the courtyard, it would be allowed. And it's telling you, but so don't eat that which you could eat inside, do not eat it outside. But in Ola, here in Ola, you can't eat it ever. You can't eat it within the courtyard, you can't eat it outside the courtyard. So once again, that verse is only going to apply to things that could be eaten inside the courtyard. If you went and you ate it outside, you're in violation of eating things in the sada, in the field, which is an area with no walls. Third try. Vilil kinami kid Rabbi Eliezer. The Rabbi Eliezer, what did he say? He said, Lo yochal ki kodeshu. So this is talking about if you back by the inauguration, it says if you leave it over for saraftas and noser ba'esh, lo ye'achel ki kodeshu. You shouldn't eat it because it is holy. So kol shebekodesh pasul bahakasav litain lo sase al achilaso. Anything which has an invalidation. So in this case, it's talking about the korbanos that were left overnight. Those that were left overnight are now invalid as a sacrifice, and yet there's a special prohibition to eat something which is now an invalid sacrifice. So to here, you removed it from its location. You took this ola outside of the walls of Yerushalayim. So you should have this prohibition that you can't eat something which has been invalidated. Yeah, we are the first line of 18b. So, second line of 18b. So just like by nosar, a korban that's been left over, which is now invalid, the Torah tells you shall not eat it. Maybe any sacrifice which has become invalid, such as our case of an ola, a fully consumed offering, which you've removed outside of the courtyard, outside of the walls of Yerushalayim, it's also now invalid to be brought. There should be an added prohibition that you cannot eat that sacrifice.
There's nothing left of it. It's burned up.
We haven't burnt it yet.
Oh, okay. Right. I'm ahead of myself. Okay.
No.
You said it's before Zrika?
It is Achar Zrika.
But right after.
No, Lifnei Zrika. The sacrifice before you threw the blood onto it's before Zrika, so you haven't yet burnt it. You shechted it, you took his blood, you haven't sprinkled it yet, and now you removed it. You went on a trip with your nice ola, and you ended up in the Golan. So now that it's invalid to be brought back and continued its service, there should be an added prohibition. Yeah, good question, Jules. Hani mili heicha dekodim psulo chazi. That prohibition is only before it becomes invalid. It's fit to be eaten. Ola, even before before it became invalid, it's not fit to be eaten. There it was talking about the sacrifices of the inauguration of the altar, and it said if you leave it over too long, then you can't eat it. But before you left it over, you could eat it. Here, you can't eat it before you invalidated it, and you can't eat it after you invalidated it. So that's only going to remain 5 prohibitions. Okay, try number 4. Maybe you should get Malkus or be over the prohibition according to the other Rabbi Eliezer. Who's the other Rabbi Eliezer? The Tanya Rabbi Eliezer Omer Kol Shehu Bekollel Tiyeh Litain Loisase Ala Chilaso. So Rabbi Eliezer has a statement that anything which is fully consumed, there should be another prohibition, a special prohibition for that which is fully consumed, that you cannot eat it. It says, they change it here. So they change it to, I think the verse says, where's the verse? Oso tochelu. One second, where's the verse? I think it's also. I think it's also tochelu. It says by non-kosher animals. It says any animal with split hooves and that chews its cud and has split hooves, that one you shall eat. And then it says again. No, that's later. I'm jumping. That's later. No. I don't know where the verse is. It just quotes a Gemara Menachos. I don't know where his prohibition is from. I don't know. Either way, Rabbi Eliezer says, Koshu Bekalotia, it should be fully consumed. So the Torah there gives I guess the pasuk is Bekalotia loy soichel. I don't know, where's that verse? I don't know that verse. I don't know. Bekalotia loy soichel gives you a special prohibition on that which is fully consumed. So that should be a sixth prohibition and not 5. Says the Gemara, Einachanami, you're right, there's 6. Rava, which said in the name of Reb Shimon you only get 5, was Mahayi Krakamar. He was going on that long verse that we interpreted yesterday. Each part of the verse was referring to Bikurim and Anadava and Meiser Sheni. So in that verse, the Gemara said, the very end of yesterday's shir, we said there's a special prohibition referring to that verse. So in that verse, we counted 5 prohibitions. But Rava wasn't saying that there's only 5. In fact, there will be a 6th one over here, this prohibition. But that verse of your Meiser and your Chatas and your Asham and your Toda and your Ola and your Bechor and your Bikurim. So that verse that we had an extra prohibition for, that's where Rava says you get 5. You're over on 5 prohibitions. But he agrees that here you would have a 6th prohibition.
Can I ask what's the difference? 5, 6. Why does it matter? Meaning,
Tshuva.
you're gonna. Is that why we're wondering how many lavender or how many things you can?
And you get 5 prohibitions. So what's the difference?
Because I'm saying, you can't handle that many Malkos anyways. You're not gonna get them all.
Right. When Rashi is no Malkos at all, just Isurim.
Oh, we're just talking about the amount of Isurim, not amount of Malkos.
You made rules for your child, and he did something. He violated 5 of the rules. What's the difference?
So they were trying to figure out how many sets of Malkos are we giving him?
According to Rashi, there's not going to be Malkos. There's only Isurim, really. Even though the Gemara says Malkos, but it sounds like it's only Isurim. But yeah, I guess you're asking a general question, no?
Like, what would be the point of adding more to somebody's sentence, so to speak, if a normal person can't even handle the full 39? You're going to say, no, you have 39, you're have 39.
It's the reality. What we give him practically, and the reality that he was, the Torah is a reality. So if it says in the Torah, this you shouldn't do. So if you violated that, so you went against Hashem's word in all these ways. Now, how we treat you practically, I hear what's going to figure that out. But you for yourself, you have to do tshuva on each one of those things.
Sure.
Right. So I'm guessing that's the biggest one.
Okay.
Maybe it's bring a korban. Maybe a korban in certain situations. You have to know. You're not bringing korbanos. But if not how severe it is, if it has 5 isurim, apparently it's very severe. I don't know. Yeah. You're asking a question. Amar Gilam Arav. Seder Gilam Arav. Simin Kuza. Okay. Kuza. Kohen. First one is Kohen. Sha'achal mechatas ve'asham lifnei zrika. A Kohen goes and eats from a sin or a guilt offering before the blood was thrown. Loka. He gets malchus. My time, the Amar Kra. How do I know? The verse says
maybe Zirka's. So maybe Zirka's after it's burned. No, how are you gonna? Unless he's eating the raw meat.
Unless they delay the Zirka.
I don't know.
Well, it makes sense. Once it's burnt, there's no blood on it. Once it's burnt, there's no blood.
No, but they collected the blood, right?
You can take the meat, go cook it quickly.
Yeah. Right. And then go with it. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good question. Now he'll done, but it's fine. So Kohen Shachal Mechatas V'Asham Lifnei Zrika Loka. My time. What's the reason? Damar Kra. The verse says V'Achlu Osam Asher Kupar Bahem. So it says you can eat them, but only Asher Kupar Bahem. Only once there's been atonement. La'achar Kapara in Lifnei Kapara Lo, and the main atonement is the throwing of the blood. That's the main atonement. Yeah, that's what allows the eating. Wonder if part of it is.
Maybe that's the
only part of it is brought up, not the whole thing. Only part of it is brought up. The other part goes to you. I don't know. I don't know.
So because the final step would be like this, and I don't know.
I have to look it up. Yeah. So in Lefnei Kapara Lo, so says the Gemara, hold on. It says you should only eat it when it's in a state of atonement. That's called a lav haba mechlala say. How do you know there's a negative prohibition here? It doesn't say you shall not eat. It says you should only eat after atonement, implying you cannot eat before atonement. But that's called an implication. That's a negative commandment that was learned out of an implication. It doesn't say you cannot eat before atonement. It says you can only eat after atonement.
Yes, there's no way they can get Makkos.
Oh, so lav abachal say lavhu. So right now the Gemara assumes that if you're, even though there's no explicit negative prohibition, but you're learning it out from an implication, you would still get malchus. On that,
no Azhara, though.
What?
There's no Azhara.
This would be the Azhara. Where's the Azhara? Good question. That's a good question. Good question. So on this, though, we ask Masiv Rava. Rava has a question. Here's a challenge. The kol behema mafreses parsa v'shasal shesa. So every animal which is chews its cud and has split hooves. So shtei parsos ma'ile geira the behema osato chelu. So it says that animal that's kosher, you can eat it, implying that everything that's not like that you cannot eat. But then it says the ein behema acheres tochelu. Then the Torah tells you, and you cannot eat other animals. So that's obvious already. If you're right that every negative prohibition, which is learned out through implication, gets you malchus, so et zelo tochelu lamali. What do I need? What do I need? Another verse to tell me I cannot eat an animal that only has one of the two signs or zero of the two signs. I should know that already. So it sounds like the Gemara accepts this rejection. Obviously, the Torah wrote that because it wants to tell me that if I eat it, I would get malchus. I would get lashes, which teaches you that if you only had a negative prohibition through implication, you wouldn't get malchus. Says the Gemara, you're right. So let's retract this whole statement. Ela itmar hachi itmar. This is what he means to say. Amar of Gidel Amarav. Zar she'achal mechatas v'ashim lifnei zrika. A non-Kohen who eats a sin or a guilt offering before the blood was thrown, pater. He's going to be exempt from lashes. My taima. It says the Amar Krav achlo osam asher kupar behem. It says you should only eat them. You can eat them only after you got atonement. One second. I'm just wondering because a non-Kohen can't eat this even afterwards. Only the Kohanim can eat chatas and asham. Essentially, the instruction's not even to a. Mm-hmm.
Okay, basically it's saying that the Torah is showing that two are interrelated.
Which two?
Confusion to eat kachim with a non-Kohen's provision against doing so.
I mean, because the verse is telling you that a Kohen could eat it after he gets atonement. Simply understood, a Kohen cannot eat it if it hasn't yet got zrika, the blood is thrown. But we're learning out, not only can a Kohen not eat it before then, a non-Kohen also can't eat it. Now, a non-Kohen can't eat it afterwards either. But at least if you were to eat it at this stage, it sounds like he wouldn't get lashes.
Does the Kohen can eat it at this stage either?
Right.
Okay.
Right. It's a funny thing because a non-Kohen can't eat it even afterwards.
Right. Yeah,
So
double there.
yeah, and I guess if he does eat it now, so then he wouldn't get. Man, this earlier. Is it Rashi earlier? Okay.
But
So,
it fits with all the other cases we were saying before. Like the point is that like the extra it has to match up evenly so that the Kohen even like
could eat it after. Only someone who could eat it after could not eat it before.
and Right?
Yeah.
The words in the comments.
So, you know, Azar Shakam Khat Nashon the fans you can potter my time. I'm a krav achlo sama shekuber behem. Kol heka de krinan bay achlo sama shekuber behem. Karinan bay v'zarlo yochal kodesh. So this is what you're saying. I think they weren't about to say what you just tried to say, is that only somebody who afterwards only someone who can eat it after the kapara. So, sorry, as long as you're eating it after it's been atoned for, that's fine. But only then you say v'zar lo yochal kodesh. There you say a person can't eat it. A person can't eat it. But any time where you can't say that that they've been atoned for, we don't say that a non-Kohen can't eat it. So it sounds like the Gemara.
Well, he still can't eat it, but he's not going to get extra malchus for it.
Correct. He's not going to extra malchus for it, right? So it's like we originally thought. Really, a non-Kohen won't get malchus for this because it's only somebody that if it was atoned for, he's allowed to eat it. It's interesting. He's considered like a non-Kohen in a certain way, meaning a regular Kohen. When he cannot eat this offering before the blood was thrown, he's viewed as like a foreigner to that sacrifice until it's been atoned for, until the blood has been thrown. But a non-Kohen can never eat it. So this prohibition wasn't set on him. It was set on, or he won't get malchus for it. It was set on the Kohen.
This just brings back my question before. He's still doing a lot. He knows he has to do teshuva for this. The Gemara is just trying to figure out if he gets malchus for it. So based on the technicality, he's not going to get extra malchus for it. But he still shouldn't have done it.
Of course not.
I mean, al tshuva, like we were saying before.
Of course he shouldn't do it, yeah.
He shouldn't have done it. He wasn't supposed to eat in the first place. But the reason he doesn't get malchus is because the Kohen couldn't have eaten it at that particular stage.
Right, yeah, he shouldn't come near it either.
So al tshuva, we know, of course, so that's why I'm confused. Like, so we're trying to figure out if he gets extra malchus for it.
Or if it's also for him.
It's for sure also for it.
Well, could be this not also for him. There's only also for the Kohen to do. He has stamina, sir. He can't eat chatas. But this the Torah says.
Not an extra isser.
Right, yeah. Amar Balazar, Amar Oshia, bikurim. So now, when you bring up the bikurim, so a few things. First of all, you can bring it from Shavuos through. You can bring it. When you bring it, you have to place it by the mizbeach. 1. You have to read the special section of the Torah. That's 2. And the question is, which one of those, one or both of them, are an absolute necessity, and if you don't do that, then you haven't fulfilled your mitzvah bikurim.
But it doesn't also have to be yours.
It doesn't have to be.
It does.
It does have to be yours, right? And yeah, you can officially bring it. I think up until Hanukkah is the last time, but you can only recite the parsha until Sukkot. After Sukkot, you can't do it anymore. Okay, so let's see. Amar Balazar Amar Oshia bikurim hanacha ma'akeves. The placing it by the mizbeach is absolutely necessary. But kriya ain ma'akeves. We had a little bit yesterday. The reciting of that, we said by the Pesach Seder, that whole recitation is not ma'akev, meaning even if the guy didn't do it, the Kohen could still eat the bikurim. So that is the opinion of Rabbi Lazar in the name of Rabbi Oshia. Umi Amar Rabbi Lazar, how can Rabbi Lazar really say this? Amar Rabbi Lazar, Amar Rabbi Oshia. He said, Hifresh bikurim kodem l'chag. If you separated bikurim kodem l'chag before Sukkot. Yeah, so you separate it. So you have it from Shavuos until Sukkot, and you separated it before Sukkot. Now what happened? You forgot to bring it up. V'avar le'en achag. What do you do now? Says the Gemara, nothing. Yirkavu. Let the fruits just sit and rot. You can't bring them up. Why not? Ma'ilav mishum delo matzi lemikre le'en. You can only say the special passage when it's a v'samachta b'chol hatov, in a time of happiness. After Sukkot, it's not that ultimate time of happiness. You can't recite that passage. So, ma'ilav mishum delo matzi lemikre le'en, and therefore you see that reciting this passage is an absolute necessity. And if you can't recite it, then there's no bikurim. So says the Gemara of Yisachar, kriya ein ma'akeves bahen. If the recitation is a mitzvah, of course you should do it, but it's not a preventative. It's not going to make it that you weren't fulfilled the mitzvah of bikurim. Amai yirkavu. Why should they rot? So that we say Kid Rebbe Zera, a famous Gemara statement from Rebbe Zera. So when you bring certain offerings, you have to mix it together with flour and oil. and there's a certain measurement, 60 measurements. Chazal said, the Gemara said, if it's 61, it's not going to be good. The question is, if you have 60 measurements, but you haven't actually mixed it together, what happens over there? So that Reb Zera says, Kol haroyi lebila, anything which is fitting to be mixed, ein bila ma'akeves. It's not going to prevent you in terms of your korban offering. Even though the Torah says you should mix it together, as long as it's fitting to be mixed, that's fine. And maybe there's a special mitzvah, you should go and mix it, but it's not going to prevent the korban from being brought. The kol she'ein roy lebila, if you have, let's say, 61 measurements, which is not fitting to be mixed, so then bila ma'akeves. Then you have to make sure. Then you have to actually. It's going to prevent you. You have to actually bring the requisite amount. Until 60, Chazal said you could mix it in one vessel, but 61 already, they said it doesn't mix well. So, so there the Gemara in Menachos asks, so who cares? It doesn't mix. Therefore, what? The Mishnah there said, even if it's not mixed, it's still kosher. So who cares? It doesn't mix well. It does mix well. So that Rabbi Zera says, no. Something which is fitting to be mixed, if it's not mixed, it's kosher. Something which is not fitting to be mixed, so then mixing is not going to help. So too over here. Anything which is fitting to be recited, to be anything, and the bikurim, as long as it's fitting to recite the recitation, so then it's still going to be kosher. That's all good before Sukkot. But after Sukkot, it's no longer the right time. It's even though you can bring them, but it's no longer the right time to recite the recitation, and therefore it is going to be a preventative. So that's why the recitation will be a preventative, because right, it must be that the recitation is a preventative, because if it wasn't, then you should be fine. But since you cannot recite it after Sukkot, so therefore it will prevent you from fulfilling your mitzvah. And that's what Rabbi Zera was saying, and that's what Rabbi Osha was saying.
It just sounds like it just supported the whole reason again that it's not good.
Once again, Hifresh Bikurim before Yontif, and now you have to rot. Why? Because you can't recite, you can't do the recitation.
Right.
And if you held the recitation is not a preventative, then it should be kosher.
Right.
How do I know that? Like Rabbi Zera said, as long as it's fitting to do something.
This is a support.
I think so.
Okay, that would make more sense. Yeah, that would make more sense.
Yeah, it's a support of this. As long as it's fitting, it's good. After Sukkah, it's not fitting anymore. So, one second. But according to this, you don't have to recite it before Sukkot. Sorry. I think you're right. I think what it's saying is, no, really the reason. Yeah, sorry. I think you're right. Really, you don't have to do the recitation. It would still be good. It's just after Sukkot where it's not fitting anymore to recite it, then it won't be good.
Oh.
But before Sukkot, even though you have a mitzvah to go and recite the recitation, but if you don't do it, it'll still be kosher. So you can't bring a proof from here, because here maybe it's just telling me that there everyone will agree that it's going to rot. Our question is, before Sukkot, do you have to recite it now or not? If you don't recite it, is it kosher or is it not kosher? So you can't bring a proof from the fact that after Sukkot it's going to rot, because after Sukkot it rots because there it's not fitting at all to recite it. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Rav Acha bar Yaakov masni lo kid Rav Asi, Rav Yochanan. Rav Acha bar Yaakov taught this in the name of Rav Asi, in the name of Rav Yochanan, and then we ended up getting a contradiction of a kashalei the Rav Yochanan ad Rav Yochanan. So we taught this idea that the recitation is going to be a preventative. You need to recite it, and that ended up being a contradiction with another statement of Rav Yochanan. Okay, Umiya ma Rav Yochanan bikurim hanacha ma'akeves behen and kriya ein ma'akeves behen. Did Rabbi Yochanan really say that only the placing by the Mizbeach is a preventative, but the recitation is not a preventative? Did he really say that? Rabbi Asi asked Rabbi Yochanan, Bikurim me'emasai mutaran lekohanim. When are bikurim permitted to the kohanim? When can a kohen eat the bikurim? So the Amar Lei, Rabbi Yochanan told him, Haru'uyin likriya, mishakara aleihen. So when it's fitting for the recitation to be recited, meaning between Shavuos and Sukkos, then you have to recite it. It's only permitted mishakara aleihen. So how can you tell me that Rabbi Yochanan said the recitation is not necessary? Here he's saying as long as you could recite it, it is necessary. V'she'ein ru'uyin l'kriya, but at the time of after Sukkot until Hanukkah, when they're not fitting, it's not fitting to be. You cannot recite the recitation anymore. So then, when is it permitted? Mishara'u pnei habayis. Sounds like when you've already entered in the courtyard and you see the base of Mikdash. From that moment on, then it's going to be permissible. So you have two questions over here. First question is, before Sukkot, between Shavuos and Sukkot, you told me Rabbi Yochanan says you don't have to recite. Here it says you do have to recite. And number two is, you told me that Rabbi Yochanan holds you have to place it next to the Mizbeach. If you don't put it next to the Mizbeach, it's for sure not good. And yet he tells me that after Sukkot, as long as it sees the Temple Mount, then it's permitted. What happened to placing it by the Mizbeach? So, kasha, kriya, akriya. We have a difficulty in terms of do you have to recite, do you not have to recite? Kasha, hanacha, ahanacha. And then you have another difficulty, do you have to place or do you not have to place? So two contradictions. So one by one. Kriya, akriya, lo kasha. The contradiction of do you have to recite the passage or do you not have to recite the passage? So that we're going to say, ha Rabbi Shimon, ha Rabbanan. One's the opinion of Reb Shimon, and one is the opinion of the Rabbanan. And we're going to get back to in a second who says what. So one of them is Reb Shimon, and one of them is the Rabbanan. Reb Shimon we had already yesterday. Reb Shimon is the one that learned that whole pasuk, and Reb Shimon said that if you don't recite it, then you have violated the prohibition. Yeah, that was Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon said, one second. That's the beginning of yesterday. He says, yeah, it was the first Gemara after the Mishnah. The Gemara said that, why do you say the Mishnah is Rabbi Akiva? Yeah, Reb Shimon says that you have to actually recite, and the Chachamim say that you don't have to recite. So the one that Rabbi Yochanan, which said you have to recite, is going like Reb Shimon, and the Rabbi Yochanan says you don't have to recite. He's just saying over the opinion of the Rabbanan. Now, what about placing it by the Mizbeach? Hanacha ahanacha nami lo kasha. Placing it is also not a difficulty. Why not? Ha Rabbi Yehuda v'ha Rabbanan. That reflects two different views, one of Rabbi Yehuda, one of the Rabbanan. Who's Rabbi Yehuda? My Rabbi Yehuda. Where did he say this? The Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda says, so it says in that whole parsha Bikurim, placing something down twice. And the assumption of the Gemara is about to say is, if you leave the two words as they are, so then it's a preventative. You have to place it by the Mizbeach. If you're going to interpret the second time it says to place it down, you're going to interpret that in a different way. So from there you see that it's not a preventative. That's the assumption of the Gemara. So it says, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, v'hanachto zu tnufa. This is in Devarim Chavav. When you bring your Bikurim, v'hinachto lefnei Hashem Elokecha. So v'hinachto zu tnufa. Yeah, v'hinachto zu tnufa. This is referring to you not to place it, rather to wave it. Tenufa, to wave it around.
So that's why it says it's preventative.
That's why it's not going to be preventative, because you don't have to actually place it down. You can just wave it and that's fine. Ready? Let's see. Ata omer zu tenufa, o ein ela hanacha mamish. Does the hinachto mean you have to actually place it down? Or does it mean as long as the owner brings it, and the Kohen puts his hand under it, and then you wave it in 4 directions. So kishuhu omer, when it says in another context, when it says already, when it says there 6 psukim earlier, the lokach Kohen hatenami yadacha, the Kohen takes the basket from his hands, v'hinicho lifnei mizbach Hashem alokecha, and places it by the mizbeach. So v'hinichu harei hanacha omer, it already says you should place it down. So why does it say it again? Hamani mekayim v'hinachto zu tnufa. So there's a mitzvah. Jules, I'm running low. 10%. Let's see. So I probably have so many things open that it goes faster. So it says one time you should place it by the mizbeach. That Rabbi Yehuda understands is a mitzvah. You should do it. But when it repeats v'hinachto, it's referring to the waving. You should wave it. And that he understands if it would refer to that you have to place it down, and if not, you do not fulfill your mitzvah. It should not interpret tenufa to mean v'hinachto to mean waving. He should have just left it as is. Because Rabbi Yehuda says one pasuk means to place and one pasuk means to wave, the first pasuk is a mitzvah, and the second pasuk is telling you that you could wave it, but not that it's a preventative. Now, it's just interesting because why view it that way? Maybe when it says place it down, it's a preventative, and there's another mitzvah to wave it. That I don't know. But that's the assumption of the Gemara, that because it says it twice, the first time is for a mitzvah, and the second one teaches you that you have to wave it, but not that it's a preventative. For some reason that's the assumption. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know more than that. So now, who argues on Rabbi Yehuda? Umantan the Palagalad Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov argues on Rabbi Yehuda. What does he say? The Tanya, v'lokach haKohen hatanami yadecha. The Kohen takes the basket from your hands, you the owner of the Bikurim, limeid to teach you ala Bikurim sheteunin tenufa. So he learns out the waving from a separate verse, which means that the 2 times it says placing, vehanacha vehinachta, he leaves it the way it is, and so why does the Torah mention it twice? The Torah mentions it twice to teach you that it's preventative, because it says the same thing twice. You should place it, and then you should place it. Why? To teach you that if you don't place it by the mizbeach, you've not fulfilled your mitzvah. So now I'm saying Rabbi Yehuda could argue in one of 2 ways. Rabbi Yehuda could argue to say that no, that's not true. The first v'hanacha tells you to place it is a preventative. The Gemara assumes not that way. The Gemara assumes that Rabbi Yehuda agrees that when the Torah says something twice, it's teaching you that because it's a preventative. The fact that here the second placing teaches you something else must show you that it's not a preventative. As I'm speaking now, I guess I understand why the Gemara assumes that. The Gemara assumes that if the Torah tells you 2 of the same things in one section, without any dispute about it, why is telling you the same thing twice? To teach you, one's for a mitzvah, and one is if you don't do it, you haven't fulfilled the mitzvah at all. So that's the simple baseline understanding. So Rabbi Yehuda, why would he argue on the principle? Rather keep the principle the same. I agree with you. In this case, though, I disagree because I learned that the second placing teaches me something else. Therefore, it will not be a preventative. But I guess we're going to keep that rule the same. There's a very similar Gemara in Sanhedrin. Mitzvos that were taught to us in Bereshis that were repeated to us after Matan Torah. What's the repetition? You have a number of mitzvahs that were already taught to us in Bereshit and they're repeated again. So okay. So Divrei Eliezer ben Yaakov, my time Eliezer ben Yaakov, because so how do you see from this pasuk the Kohen should take it from your hand? What does that have to do with waving? So Asya Yad Mishlamim. He learns Gzeira Shava from the peace offerings. Ksiv Hacha V'Lokach HaKohen Hatanam Yadecha. The Kohen's going to take the basket from your hand. That word hand is going to be necessary for us. Uksiv Yadav Tiviena as Isha Hashem. And also it says the word hands by the Korban Shlamim. Makan Kohen. Just like here it's referring to a Kohen taking a basket. So too by the Shlamim, a Kohen's going to take the offering from you. Malaholon Bailim. Afkan Bailim. Just like over there, it's referring to the owners. So to here, like Steve said, it's referring to the owners. So which one is it? Does the Kohen take it? Or does the owner bring it? Which one is it? So it sounds like the Kohen takes it and the owners do it. How do you do both? So says the Gemara, HaKetzad. Pick one. Who's going to take the basket? The Kohen takes the basket, or the owners take the basket? Says the Gemara, both. Maniach Kohen yadav tachas yidei bailim u'meinif. The owner brings the basket to the Kohen. The Kohen's going to put his hand. I think this is some kind of discussion how exactly, but the Kohen puts his hand under the basket, and it sounds like the Kohen waves it. Yeah, it sounds like the Kohen goes and waves it. So the owners are still holding onto it, and the Kohen then waves it. I guess while the Kohen's waving it,
The Kohen's putting his hands underneath the Bailim's
and
hands.
under the basket.
Under the Bailim's hands. It sounds like they're touching hands.
No, I think the Bailim are holding the basket, and the Kohen has the hands under the basket.
Tachas yedei Bailim.
Yeah, but I don't think.
Yeah, the Kohen places it under these, so the owner's got it. The basket
Oh, he's
in
holding
his
it from the
hand.
bottom.
The owner holds the upper rim of the basket while the
Yeah.
Kohen places his hand beneath the
Yeah,
base.
right. Right. So it's not. It's
So he's still touching.
like a
the base.
chatzitza, maybe I don't know, but the Kohen has to take the basket. So yeah, so the Moshe Shmuel is right. The language sounds like it's literally under the hands of the. But here what it means is the Kohen holds it up like this, right? He holds it up like this, and then
Yeah.
the owner holds it like this,
Right.
and the Bailim holds it, and then the Kohen waves it. I guess the Shoal's hands also going in a
Well, it's
circle.
also if it's like it's kind of like wide. Like when I mentioned, it's like the table. Like the Bailim's hands could be like here. But
Right.
the Kohen's hands could be like the Bailim's hands there, and the Kohen's hands like that. So he's like still touching the.
It's a
cleave.
basket. Yeah.
And they have to wave it together. So.
That's a good question. Is there halachas of chatzitza? Meaning, is there halachas like, let's say the Kohen's wearing a glove or something, or
Oh.
touching the owner's hands, like by a mikvah, things that would prevent you from, having a kosher? That's a good question to look up. The Rambam's over here. We're at a good stopping point, at a good time, and at a good percentage on the laptop. So.